backing up your file for your Fitech. So the first half of this video, there's probably going to be a ton of people interested in it. The second half, it's probably going to put people to sleep because I'm going to talk about revision control and actually being able to view the text that changes between the files. So I'll get into that in the second half here. This first half is pretty simple. I'm going to show you how to back up your configuration using the handheld if you don't already know how to do it. It's not difficult at all, but I'll go ahead and demonstrate it here. And actually, I'm going to kind of stumble through it because I haven't done this in like 6 months, and I like to back it up every once in a while. I do make changes to it on the fly sometimes. If it's a major change, I usually back it up right away, but I kind of, you know, twerk and tweak things and whatever, and don't even think much about it. But I like to have the file backed up because, those little things do make a difference. Matter of fact, I've changed some of my fan settings on this recently, so it'll capture all that. So if I ever have to replace the ECU for some reason or it gets wiped for some reason, I can load the file from the card. So I'm going to be pulling the file out of the ECU. Well, not out of it. I'm going to be copying it from the ECU into the handheld. So I'm going to get this thing turned on. I'm just going to turn the key to the on position. I've talked about this in other videos, but if you put the accelerator to the floor and turn the key on, it won't prime shot the injectors. So if you don't want to dump fuel down there, because I'm not going to start it in this case, I can let off as soon as the fuel pump stops. If you don't want it to dump fuel in there, because I'm not going to start it, so I don't want it to do that. If you hold the accelerator, I think it's past 50%. I just push it all the way down. It cancels the prime shot. All right, so we're going to go in here, and I'm going to go back into the, boy, that image is just awful, isn't it? There, that's a little bit better. All right, I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go down to read calibration from ECU. These are kind of the backup files in here that are on the card. A lot of people just kind of use these. Sorry, this isn't the best video in the world. But a lot of people just use these. I put a separate file in here for my vehicle. And so it'll overwrite whatever's on there. So these are kind of like the stock files. I've got one that I renamed the calibration that I originally backed it up to the name of my vehicle. Just so it's very easy for me to identify it. So I'm just going to simply click on this, and it's going to back it up to the card. It's just that easy, and it'll finish as soon as it's done, and that's that. Now it's going to be backed up to the card, and succeeded, and that's that. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to pop the card out of the bottom here. And I've got one of these. I got one of these little hoobies here, and you can just plug the micro SD into that. It turns into an SD card. It makes it easier for me to read because my computer's got an SD card slot. You can also plug into the handheld separately with the USB cable, and you can access the file from your computer that way. It'll turn this into a reader for the SD card that's in there, and your computer can read it. I prefer to just pop the card out, and I use one of these little dealies, and that works pretty well. So I'm going to pop the card out. There's really not much for me to demonstrate there, and it's easier for me to do that with two hands. But the card, as most know, in this handheld, not the new one, it's in a different location than the new one, but I think the process is the same. I'm going to pop the card out of here, and then the next part of this, I will show you how what the file looks like and how I back it up. All right, so this is where the majority of you folks can probably go ahead and fall asleep. I'd say for 99% of you, you're going to take the file from here. I wouldn't just only back it up on the card. I would back it up and put it somewhere. Put it on your thumb drive, on your desktop, somewhere where you're going to have it, because if that card fails, you'll lose your backup. So keep it in a safe place. I'm putting mine into a revision control system. I kind of do revision control systems as part of my job, so you can kind of ignore that part. For the 1% of you that probably care about doing a revision control system, I'm going to be using what's called GitHub And the 1% of you probably know what that is. If you don't worry about it. But it is a nice tool, and it shows me the differences between the files, and it manages the files for me. So enough on that. But I do first, I want to show what the file looks like. And so when you pop the card in, I have it plugged in down here in my SD slot with that converter. This is what comes on this is what's on here. And in the cal file, that's where the calibration files are at. There's some other stuff in here. Depending on what unit you've got, I think that the power adder units come with ProCal. I think it's ProCal software, I believe, which I've never really needed. I've used it, I have it, but I haven't really needed it. It's got some handy stuff in it. But anyways, this is where you would find your log files. If you run a log, they'd show up in here. The calibration files, so on and so forth. There's a bunch of different little things in here. It even comes with the user manual. But this is where you'd find your calibration file. You can see I have the same file that I backed it up to right here. And this is also where you can rename the file very easily. I think what they want you to do is, you start with one of these default tunes. You load one of these default files in. And then when you back it up, they tell you to back it up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. I don't do it that way. I took and I backed it up to like number 1 at some point, and I renamed it so I knew what it was. I didn't have to remember which one did I back it up to last. I just know that I use this one. And I don't change the file name because I'm using revision control system. If you choose to rename it, you can rename the file today's version is better than yesterday, or V1, or put the date in it. That's a terrible way to control files, but it works for most people that don't manage a lot of files. So you can see I have it here. I'm going to go ahead and just open it with a text editor. Yes, you can open it with a text editor, and you will be able to see what's inside here, because ultimately it breaks down to it's text-based. This is what the file looks like inside. So this is all of your tune. Your tune is in all of this text here, and you're like, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, if you actually get to looking at this, you can actually see what's in here. It's hexadecimal based. This is where you're really going to fall asleep. So you can convert it to decimal, which actually gets you to what numbers these actually are. It takes a little bit of math. It's nothing complex. Hell, you can even plug it into Google these days. You can plug in the hex value, and it'll spit out a decimal value. And you'll go, oh, I see what that is. That's 100, or it's 195 degrees. You'll see how it correlates just by looking at it. But it's kind of hard to see anything in here other than you can see, well, here's idle warm RPM, and it's 02 EE. Well, that's actually or it's actually 02 EE. It's actually hexadecimal for whatever my warm idle speed is, which I think is 750. This is what your file looks like. So what does that mean to you? Not a whole lot. You're not going to go in here. You're not going to manually change stuff. While you could, you're not going to do that. But if you're using a revision control system, what's kind of nifty is I've already taken the file and I've committed it in here, meaning that I've entered the next version into the revision control system. It actually shows me the diffs in here, the differences, what I call diffs. And I can actually see what's changed. And there are a number of things in here that always change, I've noticed every time. And this is where the auto or the tuning actually happens, the automatic tuning that the system does. This is how it trims it. So it's showing me what it's trimmed as, let's see, fuel adapt RAM. These are things that it has changed since the last time I backed it up. I did not make these changes. It just does it on its own. There's some of the things that I know that I have changed. I actually had forgotten that I changed until I looked at this. Prime fuel base, I changed the amount of time it waited, I believe, before it primed. I wanted the pump to run longer before I let the prime shot hit, because I've got a real long line from my gas tank. So I increased the time that the pump runs before it fires the injectors on prime. That helped with starting, by the way. Right here, fan 1 on and fan 1 off. It's telling me that negative, it's not this anymore, positive, it is this. So it's because I changed the on-off temperatures for my fans. I have one of my other videos I talk about it. I have a PWM controller that manages my fans for me. I turn the temperatures up to prevent the Fitech from turning on the fans, because I have it wired as the fail safe now. So if it gets up to 210 degrees, it just fail safes on, turns the fans on 100%. But the PWM controller actually manages that itself and ramps the speed of the fans up and down to maintain temperature. So I'm not allowing the Fitech to actually turn it on and off, because it has the PWM controller's got a variable temperature sensor that directly relates to the speed of the fan. So really, this is just acting as hey, if you get to this point, I'm going to fire it. So that's why I changed my fan temperatures. I've changed my idle AFR target. Some of these other things. Oh, here's prime. This one's prime shot delay. Then I'm not sure what I changed over here then with prime shot, wherever that was. So I was wrong, which it happens. I admit to being wrong when I'm wrong. Prime fuel base. I'm not sure what that is. I probably did change something. I'm not. The problem is, there's no manual that tells you exactly what these things are. They don't expect that somebody's going to be looking at the text in here. I do, because it tells me all the things that have changed, and I kind of identify and validate that, hey, yeah, I remember I changed something with that, like the fan temperature, or in this case, the prime shot delay. I know that I changed the prime shot delay. This last one, you're going to see it always changes. This is the checksum. So a checksum is kind of like a unique serial number stamp to a piece of software. So as soon as you change that software, the checksum changes. It gets a new serial number every time you change it. So that's always going to change. And this is kind of how I can also track it in here to see, if I go back to the old one, if I go back to the last file, it's actually going to be, the checksum should be 07, or 07 rather. So anyways, that's just a real basic thing on, this is actually what your tune looks like. You can go in, you can actually see what's changed. This is going to be very disinteresting to most people. If you're a software kind of person like I am, this is kind of fascinating, and you can also kind of learn what the system is actually adjusting. So you can actually go in here and see, what the system has changed on you. Here it's changed some gain of something with the idle. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I see that it's changed it, and it's probably an automatic thing that it adjusted based on feedback of driving the system. So kind of handy. It is, and I like tracking it this way, because I can definitely validate that I got a good download from the ECU, that I see the changes that I expected. So that's how this is how you back it up. Like I said, for 99% of the folks, take this and copy this file and put it somewhere, because your ECU might die someday. I've had it happen twice from temperature. I put a spacer in and have had a problem since. Fitech was great. They covered it both times. Even the second time it was out of warranty and they covered it. That's kind of a common failure with these things. The handheld starts restarting over and over. That's either a bad ground or a bad power supply to the unit. In my case, you could take a heat gun and hit the ECU with the heat gun for about 15, 20 seconds, and it would start acting up immediately, even when when the engine was dead cold. So it's kind of a common thing that I've seen. But every time that I had to replace the ECU, I could just take and drop my calibration file, and there I go into the handheld. I'd select this file from the list that's in the handheld, and I would write it to the ECU, and it was like it never missed a beat. So I didn't have to retune it or anything. There's no need for that. I was able to use my backup file here. So that's probably more than you wanted to know about backing up your file for your Fitech, but definitely back it up. And don't just back it up to the card, back it up and put it someplace where if the card fails, because SD cards do fail, put it on your computer, put it on a server, put it in Dropbox, somewhere where you're not going to lose it.